Oh, we're live. So those of you who are fans of Mirador TV and you follow us, Mirador TV comes on at 8:30. But while we're doing Rouser Radio, I've just popped into the studio and by a miracle, you can actually see me there. So while I'm pounding away at the government and the banks and everybody, yeah, you can see what it's like to see an old curmudgeon having a real go first thing in the morning. The first thing that I should be looking at, and I haven't yet, is Shannon, God bless her soul, has brought me a coffee. And I think that it is incumbent upon me to actually make sure that I pour this coffee. Oh, it's hot. It is. It's lovely and hot. So there we are. I'm pouring a coffee. It's out of shot. You can't see it. But then this is radio. You aren't supposed to see it. And there we go. Poured some milk into it. Brought it across. And I'm about to have a cup of coffee. There we go. There we go. There we go. Right? Okay. Haha. So, where are we? Yeah. Okay. No tax cuts for 2 years as inflation heads for 11%. Now, strange enough, everybody's saying, you promised us tax cuts, but it's the most sensible thing that the government can do. I mean, one of the things that there are several ways of attacking inflation, but the main one is to make sure that you don't fuel the economy. In other words, that you discourage people from pouring money out of their own coffers and into the public domain. Keep tight, hold tight. So if you cut taxes, you encourage people to spend. Now, under some circumstances, that's good for the economy. But when you're experiencing inflation, it is bad for the economy because it pushes it up. So moan and moan and moan, but that pain is not a bad one. Well, as much as pain can be poor. Right now, the Daily Express shock as food prices to soar by 15%. Well, they already have. I go into the superstore. Something that actually cost me £1 a month ago is now £1.25. Now that's more than 15%. And I'm not a bit surprised that inflation is being stoked if what's happening is the prices are going up at that level. Although one would argue that people will shop for less. Well, they don't seem to. That's the problem. We've got so used to having plenty of moans over the last 10 or 15 years. But basically, we have been fat and sassy. You want this? Take out the credit card. Pop down, get it. Have you got the money? Nah, but we'll have it. And now suddenly we're not going to have it because things are going to be that much more expensive. So that's the Daily Express. The Guardian. Johnson may scrap the role of ethics advisor after Gelt's resignation. Well, the dear old Guardian can never, ever. I mean, let's admire it as a paper. It is independent. It looks at things that others don't look at, but it does tend to be very focused on the sort of the liberal middle class point of view. So, oh gosh, everybody's starving. Everybody's going to have problems buying bread. But the Guardian and the Guardianistas, the people who read the Guardian, are all this ethics question is bugger the ethics question. Let us say to the ethics question, just go on to the back burner. There's no reason why, quietly in the background, you can't have some civil servants or a committee or whatever still investigate what Boris and what Keir Starmer did is wrong. That's fine. We're not arguing that. What we're arguing is that it should keep center stage and take up the time of the parliamentarians who, for legislation, need time to debate the various points that the government put through in the Queen's speech, not made by the Queen this year, but nonetheless an important legislative mark in the political year, and they need to get on with it. And instead of talking about iced cake and half bottles of champagne, curries and beer, what are you going to do about it? Even if you find that they're not ethical, fire them, and who are you going to replace them with? That's got to be the standing joke. I can't see anybody in the benches on either side of the House that could possibly step into the shoes of the two leaders of the moment. And if they're only leaders because of experience, boy, have they been through fire. And I think we should appreciate that. And somebody yesterday was saying, listen, Boris may sometimes be beyond the pale. He may sometimes really excite us so much that we would like to throttle him. But the fact is that he has handled very difficult situations, and he hasn't actually done a half bad job. It's the job of the opposition to sort of point the finger. But when we actually start on this ethical thing over an iced Christmas cake, then it gets nonsensical, and it shows the frailties and the weaknesses of our system. Yeah. Right, the Daily Mirror. Maxwell, let me out in 2 years. Good old Mirror is when things get tough and it can't really justify supporting Labour's position, it finds something else for its front pages. So Ghislaine Maxwell has said that she would like to be given. She's urging the court to let her out of prison in 2 years because she says she poses no danger, but she thinks she is above the law. They say, and sometimes privileged people do. And basically, she was pimping. Almost 50 years anyway, and possibly 60 years in journalism, I've come across some pimps, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that pimping and prostitution isn't a vile proposition. We should do something about it. But generally speaking, I agree with you. Pimps don't do much harm. But I once stood in the middle of Belgrade. No, it wasn't. It was Bucharest, in Romania, at about 10 o'clock at night, looking for a restaurant. And out from the shadows glided a young girl, 15 perhaps, and she offered to take me back to her place or whatever. And I said no, I was looking for a restaurant. So she said, oh, where is it? So here we stood looking at the map, trying to decide which street it was that this restaurant was on. And then out from the shadows again glided a gentleman wanting to know what was going on. It was her pimp. And we explained the dilemma, and he started to help us. So the three of us, I was standing in the middle of Bucharest at 10 o'clock at night, looking for a restaurant on the map, and having a pimp and a prostitute help me. And did they threaten me in any way? No, they did not. Actually, they were quite nice people. So I do have some sympathy when she says that she is no great threat. Okay, she's a high-class pimp. She's got a reputation of knowing the great and the good and dealing with the great and the good, and that's why she's there, really. But it's I have some sympathy of can she do a lot of harm? Is the argument, well, she should pay for what she has done? Possibly. That's a different argument, which I'm not going to go into this morning. But Ghislaine wishes to be given a light prison sentence and let out in 2 years. My God, I'll tell you, it would scare the living bejesus out of me to think I was going in for 2 days, let alone 2 years. But there we go. It's all a matter of relativity, isn't it? Right, this coffee is tasting good. The Sun. Also, the Sun is managing to stay away from anything serious. I mean, it's not a serious newspaper anymore. It was at one time. The Sun was a pretty damn good newspaper, despite the fact that it had tits on page 3. But now it's done away with the tits, but it's done away with some of its purpose too. And it's really not the newspaper that it was. So it's avoiding the temptation to get involved in the things which possibly matter is their headline is "Killed in Airport Chaos." And at Gatwick Airport, there is apparently a man who is a disabled man who got frustrated at waiting, tried to get off the plane, and in the process fell from one of the air bridges and killed himself. And whether that's to do with the packed airport or delays or frustrations, I'm not sure. But anyway, it happened. The Financial Times, Ukraine's drive to join the EU gains impetus from European leaders. There must be 2 issues of the Times this morning. Must be an early one, and they've changed the headline, have they? No, it was a Telegraph who was on about inflation. So take it back. The Financial Times talks about the fact that Ukraine wants to join the EU immediately. Now, there is a bit of a problem there. I mean, first of all, it needs the agreement of all 27 to fast track its application. But secondly, and I understand this because I've worked on EU, well, getting countries ready for EU membership in the Balkans. And those in the Balkans that have been working for almost 20 years to get them, their economies into shape and their governance into shape so that they meet EU regulations are saying, or writing to say, hey, this is foul. Why does a Johnny come lately jump over us? And this may be a warning to Nicola Sturgeon, who keeps on talking about if Scotland leaves the Union, that it will then jump into the EU. They all love Scotland. Well, they may all love Scotland on the surface, but there are 27 of them, and you can guarantee that at least 20 who don't know diddly squat about Scotland and don't give a damn. And there are another dozen waiting for membership who are going to say why they get preference. So a good lesson, I think, for Nicola Sturgeon. Should we be giving? Well, it's not up to us really. We've opted out. But should the EU and its member states approve Ukraine coming into the EU? Well, one could argue exceptional circumstances, I suppose, and why not? So it's a good question, but it's a bit of a puzzle. And now let's see. The good old Star. I love the Star. I really do. And it has stayed with the fact that we're going to have hot weather right throughout every crisis. You have to go way into the inside pages to find out what's happening in the Star. But its front page is always just a delight. 6 pints of water and a packet of crisps, please. What it's saying is that because we're going to hit 24 and by tomorrow possibly even more, that don't drink too much alcohol, drink water. So you go into the pub and you belly up to the bar, you say, can I have my packet of crisps, can I have 6 pints of water with it? And I don't suppose that we can say about water 1/8, can we? No. Oh, dear. Very, very good. Very good. Well done, the Star. It keeps me highly amused. Highly amused. All right, that's what the papers are saying. Shall we? Well, there's one here that I don't remember hearing. It's Your Love by Young Logos. Let's play it and see what it's all about. Time for a breath. Oh dear, dear. We're not broadcasting, really. We just decided to put the camera on us doing Rouser Radio. It's 8:05, by the way. We go to about 8:15 on Rouser Radio. Give ourselves a little bit of time to get ready for telly. But I hope that we stir you a little bit and get you out of bed. So that's what this is all about, right? Yeah. Actually, one of the nice things is look at those rafters. The very historic White Hart Hotel, right in the middle of Lewis, and where the plaque outside says American independence was born, and it was with Tom Paine. Oh. So yeah. Well, that's sort of a somnolence, isn't it? I mean, I could have gone back to sleep sitting here. I was talking to Shannon, the beautiful young lady who keeps the front desk going here first thing in the morning at the White Hart, and she said, "Oh, this morning I really could have gone back to sleep," and I understand too. I could have gone back to sleep as well. I was feeling very. And strangely enough, once the adrenaline starts to surge, once you start to work and you start to talk to people the way that I'm privileged to do first thing in the morning, you start to get the energy starts to come back and you start to get excited. But that early morning yawn is it's just it's just dreadful. It's a threshold to get over. Now, one of the things that there isn't once again a great deal that has happened locally that would be of import to the rest of the world. But one important thing is that Sussex wines, in other words, wines that actually are made from vineyards within the county, have got the designation Sussex wine. And that's like champagne and other designations. Prosecco, I suppose, would be a designation as well. I don't really know, but we tend to now say Prosecco for anything that comes out of Italy, don't we? So as champagne is sparkling wine, so now the designation Sussex wines, and that's rather good because Sussex wines have been gaining in reputation. They win blind tastings all the time. They are used by royalty to entertain overseas visitors. And all in all, it's a bit of a success story. And I followed this from about 1990, when there was a gentleman called Christopher Ann who spearheaded local wine growing and had the Sussex Wine Festival, I suppose it was called, at Drusilla's, where there was a small vineyard and local wine vintners and so on. But in those days, they were discriminated against by the EU because apparently the vines that we use were considered to be a hybrid and therefore not pure enough to be like champagne. Well, now it turns out that the soil that we've been growing in for years and years is so good for sparkling wines, particularly that we are beating the pants off those in other parts of the world. And so, at long last, legally, the wine growers can say Sussex wine, and you cannot say Sussex wine if you ain't Sussex wine, any more than you can say champagne if you ain't champagne. So it's a real victory for these people. And it is well worthwhile. They have been a little bit more expensive because of various tax concessions to the heartland of France and other parts of the EU. But the price should actually start to equal out now, I would have thought, to buy some English Sussex wines. And you can now say, I will have a Sussex wine. And you should be offered a range of wines within that that are grown locally, that are bottled locally, that are sold locally. And it's a good way of supporting the local economy, supporting a particular sector, but also recognizing, along with the experts, that we turn out a very, very decent product. And English wine is a decent product. Now, be careful you do not confuse English wine with British wine. English wine is that produced by a vineyard that is situate in England. British wine is where a solution is imported and then the wine is made up here by adding water and so on and so forth. So actually, it's a funny mixture. It's neither here nor there. Some of it is okay, but it's nothing special. English wines are special. They taste absolutely superb. That's not me talking. That's not even the vineyards talking, although they do say that. What it is in blindfold tastings, up against the world's best, English wine, and particularly Sussex wine, has stood up extremely well. So much so that it is said, and I have to say it is said because I've never seen the actual evidence, it's only hearsay, that French and overseas producers are buying up acreage here because A, they want to limit the growth of their own wine, domestic wine, but also they might as well start to produce here if in fact we are producing such a good wine that it wins blind tastings. So it's all good news. And I rather like the idea of Sussex being the wine producing country of England. And you can see the vineyards. Most of them are very well kept. You can see the vineyards. But wouldn't it be nice if we had these sort of temperatures every year, so that we found what happens right throughout the continent is that people grow grapes and make their own little brand of wine. Well, some of them sell it locally, but most of them it's just so that they can have their own wine on their table at dinner time and lunchtime. Wonderful feeling, an absolutely wonderful feeling. And I have to say that that's how I was introduced to wine when I was about 13. I had a friend with very sophisticated parents, and who in those days, because this was immediately post-war, is that things like sugar and so on were still rationed. They made their own wine out of damsons and out of elderflower, and their white elderflower wine was particularly good. And they went and they picked the elderflower, they brewed, if that's the right word, the wine, and at each meal, wine would be served, and you could either have a red, rather a sweet damson. I wouldn't actually recommend it for those people who like a decent red, but also the rather more tart and closer to a good wine of elderflower. And it was a good grounding for me, and it should be a good grounding for anybody. It's the way that you actually get an education into wine. And it was a way that a 13-year-old was able to sit at a table and learn about wines, how to drink them, what goes with what, because the conversation would follow that sort of thing, even though wines were particularly difficult to get. Strangely enough, the popular wine, because it was reasonably cheap, which isn't anymore, in the wine shops at the time was Sauterne, which it really is. It's really a pudding wine, I suppose, and it's on the sweet side. But that showed the taste of the country at the time, and we went for sweet wines rather than those which tested the palate or complemented the food. Although I must confess is that the food at the table in those days was much more to my liking than the food that we get now. I'm sorry, but I say foreign muck when I'm faced with pizza and pasta, and when you could have really very interesting, particularly when it comes to pies and stews. We are particularly good in England with pies and stews. Okay, some of the lighter stuff is why not continental. I do like Chinese food. Then I was from the age of about 18. I was weaned on Chinese food in the heart of Vancouver's Chinatown, which was the biggest Chinatown at that time. It was the biggest Chinatown in North America, next to San Francisco. So boy, did you have a choice! It's absolutely wonderful. Not there anymore. The stupid councils. Whenever you see anything that says, Chinatown, etc., Vancouver, don't believe it. It's both. Chinatown is gone. There's still good Chinese restaurants, but they're scattered around because the population of Vancouver increased enormously in the Asian sector. And so because they were living in the community, they expected their restaurants to be in the community. So the heart of Chinatown has gone. And what a pity. The noise of Chinatown was absolutely wonderful. You could walk past things like the New Republic Club, and you could hear chick as they played mahjong. Actually, you can do that in Hong Kong as well, but that's rather a long way to go. Well, I suppose Vancouver Chinatown is too, but then I was living amongst it at the time. Okay, there we are. It's 8:18 and time for us to say cheerio from Rouser Radio, and we will join you again in 10 or 15 minutes time with this outlet, Mirador Television and Break an Egg, and we look forward to joining us. Those of you who might just discover this by accident, that's what it's all about, is our little radio teaser, which we bring along at 7:30 each morning, each weekday morning, that is. So now we're going to say toodle pip. And you've been listening to Rouser Radio out of Lewis in East Sussex. We'd love to have you with us Monday to Friday from 7:30 to 8:20. And then if you want to stay with us, our television service, Mirador Television, at 8:30. I guess we drowned ourselves out with music there. But anyway, toodle pip, cheers. Ta-ra.